Okay, the clock on the wall says it's 6 o'clock, so let me call the meeting to order. First, I would like to acknowledge the presence of Shirley Hilsman as our newest commissioner, and welcome aboard, Shirley. We're glad to have you, and so we'll look forward to your participation. So we're missing Tom Flowers tonight. I got a call from Tom this afternoon, and his son was in a serious fall, and Tom told me he wasn't sure he would make the meeting or not. So he may or may not show up, I don't know. But at least we have a quorum. So let's move ahead, and first item is the adoption of the agenda. What's the pleasure of the commission?
Make a motion that we adopt the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay. Agenda is adopted. Okay, next item is the minutes from our last meeting. Have all of the commissioners been able to review that? Any comments on the minutes?
I read through them. I don't think we have any.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
I move to approve the minutes.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, unanimous. All right. Next item is RA 1021 rezoning application for parcels as shown. Ron?
Thank you, Chairman and members of the Commission. Tonight we have an application filed by MMCC Fund LLC of Villa Rica, Georgia, to rezone property located at the following address, 135 and 189 Commerce Drive. That's 3 different parcel numbers here as shown on the screen. The applicant is looking to rezone from MF1, multifamily low density, to MF2, multifamily medium density. They're also looking to, as a part of this, there's a C2 zoned lot, which we commonly call the Pizza Hut lot, which had the previous Pizza Hut restaurant on it. That parcel is going to be extended, the actual parcel itself. So the C2 zoning would also be going with that extension. So they're going to be taking land that's currently zoned MF1 and extending that C2 zoned lot boundary itself back further into that MF1 area. So that would be a part of the rezoning as well. There's a total of 305 multifamily units that are proposed as a part of this project. If we recall back to 2019, there was a previously filed application for this for a multifamily development as a part of a rezoning from agricultural, which was a part of an annexation from the county, into the city limits, and it was rezoned to MF1 at that time. I'm sorry, excuse me, zoned to R14 at that time. We rezoned the entire city after that in 2020, and that's how that R14 changed to MF1.
Now, at that time, it was a fewer number of units, though, wasn't it?
It was 195 units, not to exceed number that was approved by the city council.
Okay. Any comments from the commissioner for Ron?
Just so I understand, Ron, they're what we'll call the Pizza Hut lot. The commercial lot is growing, or the single-family attached is growing? Which one's growing onto which?
No single family attached,
I mean,
but MF1,
multifamily, I'm talking
yes. The C2 zone lot, which what we're calling Pizza Hut lot, the out parcel would be growing.
Okay, so it's growing into, okay. One or 2 points of ingress and regress from this?
One.
Well, just one?
Just one.
And that would be at the Pizza Hut lot, or would it be at the Meadowlark?
It would be, it's actually what I refer to in the staff report as Lot B, which is a vacant parcel. It's been vacant for quite some time now, I think forever, actually. But that parcel is actually the one where they would use for ingress and egress.
And which one is Part B? Can you tell us, just so we're clear about it?
Absolutely. So that would be parcel, just bear with me for 1 second.
That's fine. Because I know it was one of the issues we discussed last time was traffic flow.
Sure, yeah. That would have been parcel V0701100003.
Okay, I see which one.
Yeah.
All right.
Is there any other consideration for access to the property than the single one?
Not that has been disclosed or displayed on the site plan. So that the applicant may want to look into that further. But as of this, at this point, we only see one access to Commerce Drive. They do have a roadway stub at the end of Meadowlark. I believe it's Clearview Street, if I'm not mistaken. There is a section there that's a stub currently that may possibly be used for ingress or egress if the applicant is interested in doing so. That would exit at the northwestern side of the parcel, but as of right now, that's not something that's proposed.
Okay. Is the applicant present?
The applicant is present.
May we hear from the applicant?
Thank you very much. I'm Jeff Matthews, 215 West Bankhead Highway, Villa Rica, Georgia. What we're trying to do here, and let me hand y'all a little handout.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
What this is, what you're looking at is something from the National Association of Home Builders, and it pretty much mirrors what we had here, because we had a MF1 zoning when we annexed from the county, and we had 195 units. I had a good developer, quality, really good folks. When COVID hit, the world changed for a lot of people, and it changed because the equity providers and the lenders and everybody just headed for the hills and hunkered down for about a year and a half. So in the meantime, I have contracted with Wood Partners, which is a really high quality, and I think y'all may have in your packet, I gave Ron a handout, just sort of an introduction to them. They work nationwide and do a really, really good program. And so what we're trying to do here is, because of the economics, they need to put in more units. And this is in this article you'll see that with the work from home and the telecommute, everybody's got a cell phone in their pocket. So no one is tied anymore to the central city or the central business district. So you're seeing more and more people move exurbs and suburbs, which is a good thing for Villa Rica, Georgia. And a development like this will create a good deal of increased tax base. This will probably be a total of about a $60 million investment up through construction. So what we're wanting to do is add these units by going from an MF1 to an MF2, and the site plan may change. The back drive down on the northwest corner of this piece of property, where the ball field and all now accesses the high school. There may be some emergency access or additional access depending on what we get into. This site would still have to be soil bored and just a lot of engineering work done to determine where and the actual access, ingress, and egress points. But in conjunction with that, I have gotten a really good national restaurant purveyor, and they need a larger lot than what the Pizza Hut lot was on. It had been there since 1986 or 7, and it was on about a 3/4 acre lot. These new folks are going to need about 1.25 acres because they have more parking requirement because it is a sit-down restaurant. And so in conjunction with planning on this is we did a little urban renewal by Caterpillar and tore down the Pizza Hut building, got it out of the way because it had outlived its lifespan, really. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them, but that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And I did notice staff reported an affirmative on this, and I appreciate that because I do feel like it is a very, very good opportunity for us to have a development like this.
Now, in the handout that we received before this one tonight, it was called Alta Villa Rica. Is that, I didn't see that included in the handout you just gave us.
No, that Alta is the name of the company. They do a lot of apartments, and interestingly enough, that came up because 40 or 50 years ago when they were formed, everybody used the Yellow Pages. And so they came up with something that started with an A, so they'd be first in the Yellow Pages in the apartment listings. So it's not any Greek mythology or anything like that, but it is they wanted to use the Yellow Pages, and now I don't even have a copy of the Yellow Pages. I don't know who does. It's kind of like, when have you seen a coin telephone out on the side of the wall? But so if you've got any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them.
Well, this looked, from the materials that they've done before, a pretty quality construction.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any concerns about access onto, the road, the signal access?
No, sir. I think if anything, anywhere in Villa Rica can support this type development, this can, because of the signalized intersection, the proximity to I-20, and it's a divided median 4-lane highway, so it's pretty well infrastructure improved.
Any other questions for Mr. Matthews, commissioners?
One thing, let me add, excuse me, Mr. Hanneback. We have talked to the school board. I've talked to Kerry Miller, and we have talked about if the school board should so desire and the city council so chose, and we're going to have to ask for a couple of variances on this, but that will be something that would be a council item. But if we can work all this out, it may be that we open that road from 61 over through Meadowlark down to the school. So, and that, the school has been receptive to that, and we are as well if it helps the overall picture.
Would almost seem like it would be desirable. Very good. Any questions for Jeff?
No, that's something that I think's important. My kids attend school there, and I mean, with the growth of that campus and just the parking lot in the back and attending events there, I think it's a really good idea to have traffic at least come out to the 4 lanes. So I think also for emergency purposes gives an extra ingress and regress. So I think that's something that's important. So I do like to hear that. Something I'd like to hear.
Very good. Jeff, thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Ron?
So the staff, we did recommend approval with conditions for this. There is one condition for it being that the approval would have to be contingent upon the recording of a final survey, similar to what we did in the last deal. It would have to identify the proposed parcel boundaries. And the reason we need to do this is because of that lot, that what I refer to as the out parcel, the Pizza Hut lot, being that that's growing in size and the zone is changing. We need to know where that boundary is going to fall.
That's something that could be just done with a survey, right? They could shoot a survey and change it.
Absolutely, and we'll do that in the office.
Okay.
And that was with your recommendations?
It is, yes.
Okay. Any comments the commissioners have for Ron? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Looking at the plan, again, with the conditions that the city has put on it, I'll make a motion that we, and I guess we're moving it from F1 to F2, is that correct?
MF1 to MF2.
Have to be careful, my line of work, that means different words. So we'll call it MF2. I'll make a motion that we
Before you
accept
make
it
a
as planned.
motion, Mac, is there need for a public hearing?
There is, yes.
Yes, I thought so.
Sorry, I
Thanks.
rushed that a little bit.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll open up public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak for or against this proposal? Seeing none, okay. Mike?
I will renew my motion to accept the application to change it from MF1 to MF2, the lot, the parcels known as 153, 003, and 230 that's listed as the item 1 in our agenda,
With conditions.
with conditions as approved by the city. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I hear none. I call for the vote. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much, Ron. Next item, Ron.
All right, so our next item is RA-06-21, an application by Starlight Homes, Georgia, LLC. They're applying for a rezoning of a 29.21 acre vacant parcel from industrial medium density I2 to single-family attached SFA. The purpose is to construct a 268-unit townhome development. The applicant has indicated that the townhouses will be single-car garage townhomes. The townhouse widths would be 22 feet, which is under our ordinance requirements of 24 feet, and they are aware of that. And also the total density of the project would be 9.17 units per acre. So this property would have two ways of ingress and egress. There would be an ingress and egress directly onto Bankhead Highway. This is a flag-shaped lot, so if you could picture a flagpole, it would be the actual pole that runs down to 78. So they would have a driveway there, and they would also have a driveway on Villa Trace proposed.
Okay.
So we have heard from one property owner as well that had some concerns, wasn't against the project, but just had some concerns as well. So we did receive some information to that effect, and that did revolve specifically surrounding some utility-related installations that have been there for quite some time. So there might be some clarity that the applicant might be able to give to that. Otherwise, the staff is, we're recommending denial of the application since it's in a industrial character area in the comprehensive plan, and they're looking to go into a zoning category that's not actually a recommended zoning category, the SFA zone in an industrial area, which is similar to another application that we've had recently for townhomes.
Can I ask a question? I had a lady who owns a piece of property on the front end of this come to me recently at my office, and she actually brought me a letter, and I have it with me. She had concerns, and this is what I have to ask the city because I don't know the answer to this. She has concerns with sewage capacity on that end of the city. Is that something that, call that the north plant, I guess, on Van Wert? Is that something that the north plant can handle, or do you know?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
That's something that the applicant would have to get, would have to find out from our utilities department if it's something that can be serviced or not serviced. So in the past, we've had a couple of these now, primarily south of I-20, where we've put conditions in there for that, but that's a major bottleneck area.
And one other question I had, and this is one that I've thought of since you brought that up. What happens if we do approve this and they, let's just say they build the 200-something townhomes? Do we have the capacity if someone comes along and wants to build something in the industrial park to, granted, we don't know what that might be, but
Yeah.
do we have the water and sewage capacity to accommodate that particular future development? Because you start thinking about the tax base and what we're going to get from 260 townhomes versus maybe the industrial that might bring 100 jobs or 250 jobs, and that the residual effect of that money. That's, you kind of got to weigh before you change the industrial. That's what I was just asking.
Sure, yeah. So, unfortunately, I'm no expert on utilities,
Okay.
unfortunately, but, I can only imagine that obviously, anything that would have residential units would, of course, use a lot more water and sewer than, for example, a industrial building,
Yeah.
would.
Unless they were,
So I
unless they
understand your
dyed
concern.
something, or they use, if they were granite cutting or something like that, they would use a lot of
Sure,
water.
yeah.
But I just, I was just thinking that if we're trading off, if we're taking an industrial piece of land and turning it into a single-family residential, what if we had well, if we did have an industrial come along, would we then be able to accommodate them? Would we have to turn them down because we don't have the capacity? That would be a shame to turn down
Understood.
business.
Right.
So,
I
that's
understand your
all.
concern. Yeah.
That's all. I don't know the answer to these questions. That's what I'm asking.
Ron, you want to elaborate on your recommendation a little bit more as to why you recommend denial?
Sure. So it's directly tied to our comp plan. So anytime that we have these types of applications where something is not, an applicant is looking to rezone into a zone that is not a recommended category by the character area that they're located in based off of the comprehensive plan and the future land use map, typically we would always give a denial or recommend a denial to the commission and to the city council. And the applicant would typically have to state their reasonings for why they believe that zoning category would be fine in that character area.
But the applicant is aware now
Oh, yes.
of these, so, okay. Is the applicant present?
The applicant's attorney is here, Mr. Joe Fowler.
Thank you, Joe. I think I did.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Joe
Good evening.
Fowler. I'm from Douglasville, and I'm here with the applicant representative. It's Mr. Joe Ingram, who's here with another member from his firm, Christian, and then Jeff Matthews is the owner of this property, along with the late Burnell Redding. Starlight is the proposed developer. You'll see the site plan and the elevations of the proposed properties. They have been developing in the Atlanta area for some time. They have a number of projects already, that a couple in Cartersville that include townhomes and single-family residential properties. Their single-family homes are in the 2,700 square foot range. The townhomes are what's proposed here, 1,421 square feet. They've got projects in Decatur, Loganville, and Monroe, but they build others in other places as well, Florida, North and South Carolina, Texas, and Arizona. I mention that only because they're a solid, long-standing building firm which doesn't just develop and sell. as sometimes happens, particularly with townhomes. But they buy a suitable property in a growing community like Villa Rica. They develop the property, they get it platted, they organize the subdivision in accordance with the local ordinances, and then they build the homes. This is a project that they're proud to develop on this property. We recognize that the current comp plan calls for it to be industrial. Mr. Matthews, in a moment, will talk about the fact that it's been on the market for sale for a long, long time in keeping with both the comp plan and current zoning. It's right now I-2, which is industrial medium density, and there have just been no buyers in the market. In fact, most recently, right next door on the project that I happened to have handled a couple of months ago, just to the north of this, off Leggett Road, an industrial access property was rezoned for townhomes, which anticipated and required a rezoning by the council that was contrary to the comp plan. Now, the site plan generally shows that it's a 29.21 acre tract. As was mentioned by Ron, there are 268 townhomes proposed. You'll notice, however, that the open space is substantial. It's more than 45% of the entire site. As was also mentioned, the density for the project is 9.17 units per acre. And you'll see the access point on US Highway 78, but also Villa Trace. The townhomes are a width of 22 feet. Mr. Ingram will talk about that more in just a moment. Each townhome has a single car garage. The driveway length is 20 feet from the back of curb or sidewalk. That is designed with a separation of 20 feet from the buildings, 20 feet from one another. And that is an issue under the ordinance that will have to be taken up with the council later. The city, you may know, is considering changing their townhome ordinance. Right now, the ordinance is unusual, and Ron and I have talked about this as much as we've talked about anything. It's 40 feet between the buildings if there's a window on the sides of the buildings. Depending on what opening a window provides, it could be 30 feet. But normally, it is 20 feet only if you have no windows whatsoever. You can be 20 feet if you have no windows. You can be 30 feet depending on the type of the windows. If you have windows with regular openings to living spaces, it's 40 feet. The city is looking at a variance to that ordinance. In addition, the ordinance now requires these buildings to be set back from one another on what has been described here as a push-pull basis of 20 feet apart. So a building here, the next building would be 20 feet set back. The next one would go 20 feet forward and so forth. I think the council is looking at those ordinance amendments on the 9th of November. So between tonight when you take action and the time it actually comes before the council, there'll be a decision about what may or may not be required with respect to the site plan that you see before you. This is proposed recognizing that there will be some setbacks, but the setbacks will not be what the code currently requires. As I noted, the open space is 45% of this project. The ordinance under section 7.13 says that it's mandated to be 12%, so we're almost 4 times the open space. 3 amenity areas are proposed. That's required by the code, and as you remember from section 7.14, you select from a list of amenities. That, of course, would be done when we get to final development stage. Sidewalks 5 feet in width will be constructed throughout the development. And as you notice, if you look at the site plan, there are these bump outs in the road that are essentially serving as traffic calming locations so that the traffic can be controlled in such a way that you don't have to have speed bumps, but you know what those are. They help control the traffic as they move through the development. The elevations are shown on the drawing that I provided to you. These are typicals. They're similar to other projects that have been prepared by the company. With your permission, I'll ask Mr. Matthews to come up and talk about this site. How long have they had it on the property?
Before
on the
you do
market
that,
for sale?
you said there were several amenity areas. I only see one shown.
Upper right, lower left, and in the lower area that it says park area. Within that area, they will construct 2 other amenities as required by the code.
Okay.
And then, actually, as you're looking at it on the screen, it's upper left amenity area.
Yeah,
And Mr. Ingram will talk about what's proposed for those types of things.
Okay.
So, Joe, would you come forward? Well, Jeff first, and then after him.
Okay. What I'd like to do is just give you a brief history or chronology of the property, because I've found sometimes if you know where you've been, you can figure out how to go forward. But Burnell and I bought this piece of property 20 years ago, 2001, and we bought it from Mr. S.T. Leathers Jr. and his daddy, Mr. Turner Leathers. That family's been around here for a long time. In fact, Mr. Leathers Sr., Turner Leathers, was the Timex watch salesman in the state of Georgia in the southeast for 46 years. If you were a jeweler or if you were Rich's or Macy's and you wanted a Timex watch, you had to call him. And I knew him because I cut some timber for him years ago, and he was an interesting bird to talk to because he actually knew John Cameron Swayze, the fellow that came up with the "it takes a licking and keeps on ticking." And I feel that way sometimes. But anyway, this piece of property is currently zoned I-2, which is medium density industrial, and it is really not big enough in the current industrial environment for that application, because the new wave of industrial development are big tilt walls. I saw an advertisement for one out off of 101. Someone's put up a sign, going to put up a 400,000 foot building, nearly 10 acres under a roof. So this tract is not conducive to that, and I really think that from a neighborhood standpoint, and talking about the neighborhood, this tract actually joins the second planned unit development in Carroll County. I think the first was Fairfield, and then this one joined Carroll Vista, which included houses, apartments, which are adjacent to it there on the right on the north side. I think it's the west side, but it went all the way out in front of Martin's. That was the old Jack Lassiter property, and it had a lot of houses and commercial, and the piece out there where Waterford subdivision was part of that same PUD, and it was done by Carroll Service and Development Corporation, a division of Carrollton Federal. Some assembly required, so substantial penalty for early withdrawal. They had a really good savings and loan in Carrollton, Georgia, financed a lot of homes and helped a lot of people. And in helping folks, I think this development will be much better than industrial adjacent to that neighborhood, whether it's adjacent to the apartments or the single family that is on further west of there, South Lassiter Circle and some of those other roads. But you're not going to have a noise factor. You're not going to have a dust factor after construction. And the townhouses would be built, they're going to start in the mid-2s, which I know I'm old, but I think of a $200,000 house, wow. But now everything is pretty much starting there. But these would be single family for sale, and I'm not trying to take Mr. Ingram's fire here, but these would be private streets with an HOA to control things like parking, etc. So from a standpoint of a quality development, I really think it would be a good thing. And the other question that came up was about the sewer capacity, and Mr. Ingram has a letter from Mr. Elliott with the city saying that there is capacity. I think that plant out there, the west plant, is running at about 50% capacity. So there is plenty of sewer capacity for this and whatever else. And it also is on the north side of 20. So you're not dealing with the problem of a lot of lift stations and a choke point coming under 20. And the other thing, and I guess this is more of just a personal point here, For about 10 years, we didn't have anything going on in Villa Rica. There was not anything, and there was not a lot going on nationwide because of the Great Recession, and I've got that T-shirt. So everything just quit. But since things have come back, since we have sort of rekindled the flames a little bit, every time I've been to a planning and zoning commission or a city council meeting, we're having to massage and adjust the comprehensive plan, because most plans we think we can think about all the eventualities, but if you don't have a contingency plan, or if you're not flexible, if you take off to go to Temple, Georgia, and the bridge is out here at the Little Tallapoosa River, you're going to have to figure out a way to go around. You're not going to sit there and wait on DOT to fix the bridge. You could be waiting a while, the way they operate. But the general situation with a comp plan is it has to have some flexibility. It has to be somewhat malleable so that it can be adjusted as you go forward. And I just think that's real important, that we don't just get stuck in a rut and say, oh, well, it doesn't fit, plan A, then you may have to go to plan B. But if that's this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Ingram. But if you have any questions about the property, it's interesting piece of property. It does have some challenges. It's got some rock on it. In fact, saying it's got a little rock may be like saying the Titanic took on a little water. But it is a really, really good location, and with the, and this will take probably 4 or 5 years to build out. If y'all approved it and City Council approves it, these houses are not going to just pop up like mushrooms after a spring rain. But I do appreciate it.
Can I ask one question
Yes, sir.
about the Leggett Drive?
Yeah.
Could that be accessed, could this property be accessed via Leggett Drive to give it another endpoint, ingress and regress?
Yeah, we do have a 1 acre deeded piece that, while not probably I wouldn't want it as a front door from a marketing standpoint, it could be used, yes. All right, thank you.
Good evening, Board. My name is Joe Ingram. I am with Starlight Homes. I've had some fantastic points I was going to be making tonight, but I think most everything that I was going to raise has been raised. But with that, I'd love to answer any additional questions you guys have. As far as Starlight Homes is concerned, we have been in the Atlanta market for about 5 years now. Our first year, we did close to 45 closings, I think. We have since we closed out our fiscal year in May of 2021, and this year we closed a total of 467 homes in Atlanta. So we've grown quite a bit. We are if you like to call it, a subsidiary of Ashton Woods Homes. We are 2 separate companies, but it is the same ownership group, and Ashton Woods has been in business in the Atlanta market for over 30 years. So we are a well-established home builder. As Joe stated, we are in the business of building homes and selling fee simple. All our neighborhoods do incorporate a mandatory homeowners association. Product-wise, I think you've got the perspective that I'd provided Joe with, so you can see what we do. Those are townhomes that we've built in other markets. Haven't done anything down this way yet, but are looking forward to the opportunity. The townhomes you're looking at are, or I think Joe mentioned, development called Parkway Station that we're currently building in Cartersville, which isn't Villa Rica, I understand that. But from a sales price standpoint, we closed as of today, our latest closing out there closed at $262,000. So it's, we are a for-profit company, so from a sales price standpoint, we want to price as high as the market will bear. So I guess with that, I'd open it up to you guys for any questions you may have.
So you would consider about that same price range for these?
I think preliminarily what we looked at, and it's been a couple of months since we did a market study for this, but what we're seeing this market right now is, I think we'll start lower than $260,000, to be quite honest with you, because we want to generate sales pace and momentum. Now, whether that means we start in the 230s, I don't know, but our goal is to increase pricing just as quickly as we can.
When would you anticipate starting construction?
If and when approved, we would start our land disturbance permit design, which is probably a 30-day process, and then depending on what Villa Rica's timeframe is for approving that submittal set, which has been our typical experience, is 90 days. So I'd say we're at least 120 days from breaking ground if approved.
So it'd be early 22 then?
Yes.
Can I ask you, and I heard Mr. Johnson speaking about this, one of the issues was the sidewalks on both sides of the street. Is that something that you guys are unwilling to move on? Is that a price point situation?
It's not so much a price point situation as it is, so as has been mentioned, I mean, the site is constrained by rock. And you'll notice where we've set 5.5 acres aside that's not going to be developed. Now, could that be developed? Yes. Is there a cost to develop that? Yes. But what we're trying to do is develop the portion of the site that makes sense. So we're with the private streets.
Are you basing it on like soil samples? They'll take
Oh
soil
yeah,
samples?
oh yeah.
Okay.
We've drilled the site. We've done test pits. We've beat it to death to really quantify what it is we're dealing with in the way of rock. So it further challenges the site as far as just the viability standpoint. So with sidewalks on one side of the street, keeping garages 20 feet off the back of those sidewalks to allow a car to park on the driveway without impeding pedestrian flow on that sidewalk is really what we're trying to achieve there.
And is there a big issue with the setbacks? And I think the reason the city, and I may be speaking out of turn, but I think the reason the city wanted setbacks on the building is so that you didn't have sort of the cookie cutter straight line looks of all the townhomes looking the same, because that's kind of what you have when they're all lined up. I think the purpose for that was to give it some distinct look in each street. Is that something that you guys are unable to move on, or is?
So what we're proposing is like a 2-foot jog on each unit. To do a 20-foot setback in the manner that I guess the existing code contemplates. I mean, you would then have townhomes with a 40-some-odd foot driveway, which is just not conducive for a townhome development.
Could be, just run the price point up, right? Because you'd have to have more concrete and those sort of things. It just break price point.
It would undoubtedly raise the price. I don't know that I've seen many townhomes with that much of a driveway, quite honestly.
Gotcha.
Any further questions? for
Yeah,
Mr.
Mr. Ingram, I have
Sure.
a question. You mentioned the HOA, and I'm curious to know, is there any sort of rental cap?
We
being
have
discussed?
incorporated rental caps in our HOAs before, yes.
Okay, is that something that would be considered for this project?
Absolutely, yeah.
That's one of the things I agree with David that concerns us the most, is the fact that we see first generation of these are all fine and good. 7 years down the road, it turns into Section 8, it turns into rentals, and then you get absentee landlords, and then you have the effects on your schools and everything else because you don't have people that own the place living there. And that becomes problematic for a community, and I don't care where it is. And that's something that we're concerned with. So I think that's something we'd be interested in is some sort of rental cap, that it not go above, 20%, 18%, 12%, something along those lines. Because that's what happens when you turn in, and like I said, the first generation, they're all new and nice, and everybody's happy. But then 7 to 10 years later, you get the second family, the third family, whomever. Next thing you know, you get a group from California or Washington or Florida buys them all up, and they rent them out to the lowest bidder essentially, and that's not good for us. And of course, you guys will be long gone, sold them, and moved on to your next rock busting project, but we'll be left with what's left. So that's what we're concerned about.
Understood.
Another question I have is this property, is there any consideration to gating the community?
Hasn't been, no, just because you just talk about an ongoing maintenance obligation, gates, in our experience, we typically stay away from them.
And I can't be too upset. For 45 years, as long as I can remember, almost 50 years, there's been a trailer park next door to it. So, I mean, this is definitely probably a better neighborhood than the trailer park. So I think this would be an improvement over that, for sure. because there's been a trailer park there as long as I can remember.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Ingram. It's,
Absolutely.
very
Thank you.
good.
Thank you.
Good presentation, good-looking properties. At this time, I'd like to call for any inputs from the audience. Anybody have any comments that you would like to make, pro or con, to this proposal? Come forward. Seeing none, we'll revert back to Ron.
Come on.
Chair,
Okay.
we have a
Yep.
question.
Come on.
I'm sorry.
My question is,
Your name and address, please.
David Rodwell.
Address?
I own the apartment complex behind of which they're talking about. My biggest concern is what effect will this have with the traffic situation that we already are frustrated with on Villa Trace and 78? And the other question is it going to be a gated community, fenced in, or anything like that?
I have to ask the developer. I can't answer.
I guess we need to direct that.
Mr. Ingram?
So currently not planning to gate the community or have perimeter fencing. From a traffic standpoint, I mean, whatever happens with this piece of property, any other piece of property will no doubt add to traffic. If traffic's a problem today, then any sort of development isn't going to help to alleviate that concern. The only point I would make is that if you're going to put density somewhere, this is seemingly the spot for it. And you're routing traffic out to 78, taking it to 61, and taking it to I-20 within a couple of miles. But no, I guess to answer the question, there's not a plan for perimeter fencing or gating right now.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ron?
I'm sorry. The applicant has indicated that they're interested in looking into a rental cap for the community. They just don't know what those numbers are at the moment. They are looking to propose that rental cap at the city council meeting or prior to the city council meeting.
I'm sorry, they would do what?
They will propose a rental cap for this
Oh.
community at the city council meeting that in December.
Okay. Any further questions for,
Ron, I want to ask, just to make sure I understand, the city's, or the staff's recommendation of denial was based on simply that it's non-conforming. Is that the primary basis of the city's recommendation, or it has to also do with the sidewalks and the lack of setbacks, or is it just basically because of the non-conformance?
Strictly just to the non-conformance of the comp plan.
Okay, and we've, like I said, we've recently deferred from that on a piece of property that's adjacent to this. So I just wanted to make sure that was the reason why. Thank you.
and is there consideration at the council to change that requirement?
Change the comp plan itself?
No, not change the comp plan, but to change the setbacks and the
Yes,
requirements.
so on, and it's been tabled now for probably, I'd say, the last two council meetings, but these changes came before the commission, I want to say two to 3 months ago, to all of the multifamily design standards scaling section. I believe it's section 9.03. So that ended up not getting a positive recommendation from this commission. It was a 2-2 vote, if you recall. There has been some very minor changes to that, but we are looking to move that forward on next week's agenda for the city council. So that may have of course, depending on if the city council is looking to make those changes, that can have a pretty profound effect on how many variances they may need, if any at all. It'll have some effects on what you're actually looking at, as far as the distance between buildings, the push-pull, et cetera. So, for example, we are recommending, if you may recall from our meeting, we were recommending a 5-foot push-pull instead of a 20-foot push-pull. So that's one thing that would change the site plan, and it looks like they're showing 5 foot on here. So that change may not make a change for the site plan, but there's other changes as well. That distance between buildings, for example, townhouse garages and opening towards the front versus the rear, et cetera. So there's some changes. There's some things that may change this site plan.
Would it be appropriate for the commission to consider tabling this for a month until we hear what council is going to do?
Well, of course, it's up to the commission. However, this is, those changes, and being that this is a rezoning application only, we're really just talking about the zoning, and a lot of these finite details of development requirements or zone requirements would be looked at a later date anyway. Like, for example, sidewalks on the preliminary and final plats. That's something that would be looked at there. There's plenty of others. I've called a lot of them out in the report.
Ron, if this were to be approved and some of the give and take goes back and forth with staff, would sidewalks and some of the other concerns be addressed at that time?
Yeah, they would have to be addressed prior to the final plat phase. So they would have to have all of their sidewalks shown on the plan, what roads the sidewalks would run on, if it's the north or south, east, west sides of the road or what have you. All of that would be shown on the plat at that time, and also the note that you're seeing on the current site plans for sidewalks would also find their way to that plat in some form or another, in addition to any conditions that the commission and the city council are looking to put on the property.
Well, it certainly seemed like a desirable proposal and it looks good. I am concerned that if we approve this, depending upon the council or the city council making changes, that's a little spooky. But what is the commissioner's position?
As you guys probably have learned from my time on here, I'm not a big fan of the townhome or the apartment. However, there are certain pieces of property where if you look at this piece of property, it's kind of landlocked. There's been a trailer park there for 50 years, and it's sort of landlocked. It's not really able to be accessed much anything else. I think if this is development, and I'm not trying to get in the way of people making a living, making money on it, because they have held this property for many years. So I would vote that we approve the zoning application from medium density, industrial medium density I2 to single family attached. And the reason I feel that is because I don't think the property is large enough to attract an industrial customer or client in the future. 29 acres just with a small access point is just not going to be enough. So I think that we can do that on this particular property. So I would move that we approve the 29.21 acre parcel.
And I'd like to amend your motion to include a condition of a rental cap not to exceed 15%.
Did you approve that?
I have no objection to that. I'll approve the amendment.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve this with the conditions as stated. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, denied, approved. Okay. Next item, Ron.
Sure, just one moment. I'll just wait a second.
There we go.
All right. Our next next item that we have on the agenda, the preliminary plat procedure. The staff is recommending for a change to our preliminary plats, to have these plats actually approved in the office administratively. So as a part of that, we looked at some other towns, we looked at other jurisdictions to see what they have. It's very, very, and I can't stress this enough, it's very common for these preliminary plats to actually be something that is approved in an office environment, and not actually go to a planning commission. Of course, there's the fact that approving them in the office would make them, of course, move faster, and would get us to a final plat that does still need a public hearing in front of the city council. But there's of course the delay there of waiting for a public hearing to approve plat requirements, that's the only thing that you'd really be looking at as a commission, is just the requirements of the plat is actually on the plat. So we're looking to actually make that change and have that done in-house and done within the community development department.
Now, I sent you a note asking what this technical advisory committee was, and you questioned where that was. It's on the first page of your item. And I still wonder, what is the technical advisory committee? And who is it? It's the bottom of the first page.
Let me see. First page.
Paragraph 3.
We just want to make sure I'm looking at the same document as you. 'Cause
6.06 preliminary plat procedure, bottom, paragraph 3, technical advisory committee.
6.03. Yeah, I'm just not seeing what they're saying.
It's right here if you want to see it. It's at the bottom. It's at the bottom right here.
Yes. Okay, so the Technical Advisory Committee, that is a committee that's in-house, that's made up of the city engineer, community development director, myself, Chris Montesino is a special projects manager. So we review those, the building official also as well. So we would be the ones to review those plats.
Well, this strikes me as a rather significant change.
Have we become problematic? Have we asked too many questions?
That I don't know.
Have we gotten in the way too often? Because that's what it looks like. So we're supposed to vote away some of what little authority that we get paid so much for. We're supposed to vote that away. Is that what I hear?
Well,
I mean, that's what it looks like. It's like, hey,
yeah.
we're gonna, with the little authority we've given you, we're going to take that away. We want you to vote away. But do it with a smile, and we'll be okay about it.
And my concern is
come
that
on.
you're taking the citizens' voice away. We
No.
are a citizens panel of review, and you would basically be taking that away, putting it in the sole authority of
Bureaucrats.
one individual, the way I read it. I understand you've got a advisory committee and all that. I feel really good that all of that still should take place, and the people still should have a say.
Frankly, it looks like retribution to our last month's decision.
Well, all I can say is this is exactly how all the other municipalities surrounding us do it. I really don't see, other than, of course, there's a public notice requirement as a part of these preliminary plats, but outside.
What other
I'm sorry.
municipalities do?
Paulding County.
That's a county. No, that's-
Yeah, all jurisdictions in
Give me
general. Douglasville,
Oh, that's exactly what we want to become. Okay, great. Next.
Carrollton.
No, thank you. Next.
Let's see. And I checked another, I believe it was Powder Springs we checked.
You hadn't wowed me with any of
So-
them
Yeah.
yet. So,
So-
I'm
so-
not impressed. I mean, I don't see the,
So
I
here's
don't
the
see the
thing.
need, I guess.
Sure. So here's the thing. And you brought up the last meeting, so all I'm doing is just following up on that concern. Now, at the last meeting, there were a lot of great questions that were asked by this commission. I will say that. There was a lot of great questions asked.
Thank you.
However, I didn't hear any questions related to the actual preliminary plat itself. There weren't any questions related to if it meets the actual plat requirements. The plat requirements were attached to the plat application. All of those requirements were on that plat. And so as a part of this, and again, this is not a retribution-related thing. It made us go back and look at our own processes and see if those processes are in line with and is industry standard at all. The reality is it's not. I don't really see the purpose for a preliminary plat not to be something that's approved in an office environment. It really is just looking at a list of requirements and putting them and seeing if they're on a plat and checking off on that. The final plat is something that would have a public hearing for the public, so they can actually see that plat. They can make their comments on that plat. And if the city council isn't comfortable with the plat, or if the plat is very different than something that the planning commission and the city council approved as a part of a concept plan, as a part of a rezoning, that would be the time, for all of that to come to light. So there might be changes for the plat, for that final plat, at any given time in the future. So if you did approve a preliminary plat tomorrow, for example, or tonight, there can be substantial changes to that plat before a final plat is approved. This preliminary plat stage is literally, it really is just checking off to make sure that we have all the things that the ordinance requires on the plat.
It just strikes me as funny, we had a chance to change this when we approved the zoning ordinance. And this is from that document. And, it was approved at that time with the planning commission's responsibilities. And now you're asking us to change that.
It's a living, breathing document. I mean, the ordinance changes with time. We're proposing changes for next week, for example, for the multifamily design standards. And we passed that also in 2020, and we didn't have any standards at all before then. It were very minimal standards. So we're actively and progressively looking at our processes. We're looking at our regulations. We're constantly making changes. We have 3 more on this same agenda tonight. So we have to be able to move and change as times. We have a huge amount of development that's going on. We have over 6,000 units or so coming online. You guys just approved almost 600 units tonight. So as a part of that, we need to be able to buckle down on the timing that it's taking also to get through our entirety of the development process, from the time that they submit that rezoning application to the time where they're issued a building permit. And this is a 30-minute delay or 30-day delay at least to get to this meeting to approve preliminary plat requirements that we are beyond capable of doing in the office, of looking at this preliminary plat checklist and being able to check off on it like every other jurisdiction is doing, not only just surrounding us, but it's almost statewide. I couldn't even find one that does a preliminary plat in front of a planning commission. Couldn't find one.
But 30 days, is that really that much of a detriment?
I can, if I ask any developer, yes.
Not asking.
And I mean, I think it is a detriment. I do.
But maybe we slow down some bad development. Maybe we end up with something we don't want.
Hopefully we don't approve any bad development.
Well, that's what we're trying to oppose. But also, I know on this technical advisory committee, who'd you say was on the committee?
It's at least four to five different folks within community development. That would be myself, Chris Montesinos. That would be, I believe, the city manager, the community development director.
How many of those people own property inside the city limits of Villa Rica?
I don't know. And I couldn't disclose that on the mic.
Yeah. So then you begin to ask yourself, do they really have vested interest in the city of Villa Rica? Do they have vested interest in moving business along? There's a difference.
Well,
and they can be the same. They can have the same purpose.
mm-hmm.
But the question is, do they have really interest in the system? Do they have interest in moving the paperwork along faster?
I think that we all do, because we all have licenses and certifications that would otherwise can be stripped if we don't. So I feel like there's a personal interest as well, despite if you own property here or not. I mean, we are employed to do a good job and to do our jobs. So in order to do that, we would have to keep our licenses up to date, our certifications and things like that. So we don't want to, right.
But this seems to take away another voice, another opportunity for the public to have input and involvement. And also, who's the community development director? Is that Bobby?
No, that is Tracy Jarvis.
Nice to meet you, Tracy.
You know, I
Well-
want to say that I can't even count how many times we've had an application or an item on the agenda where I've heard, oh, look, this preliminary plat was already approved in 2001 or at an earlier date. And so once these preliminary plats get approved, I mean, they've got a green light to proceed, you know, sometimes in contrary to what would be appropriate, in my opinion. And I think that, you know, we're a panel of citizens up here, and I think that everything that's proposed is good stuff and should be implemented, but I definitely disagree with taking the Planning and Zoning Commission's input out of it, as well as, you know, that would include all of the public.
This does not require a public hearing.
I believe it does, his ordinance
Text
change.
amendments, yes, require a public hearing as well.
Well, if there are no other questions at this time to Ron, I'll open it up to a public hearing. Your name and address, please.
Brenda Caniff, 8934 Connors Road. I am just outside, I'm your neighbor in unincorporated Douglas County, but I find it interesting that they're saying that this thing y'all just voted on in 2020 is a living, breathing document, and it's going to flex and have change. But it's real interesting to me that the Mirror Lake Master Plan doesn't flex and change. Is that not a living, breathing document? Could that not be changed to go along with the comp plan a little bit better? This does seem to me to be a little bit self-serving by the community development director, department, not director, I'm sorry, I've never met you. But it does seem to be a bit self-serving because it will take away the public's opportunity at the preliminary plat phase to have a say and to let people know, hey, we're paying attention, we're going to make changes, we're going to request you and hold you to the bar of the standard that you're trying to set within this community. So I kind of think that terminology is being used a little bit liberally, a living, breathing document, when we have found out some aren't.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any further comments? If not, revert back to the commission. I will entertain a motion on this item. If not, I will make a motion that this item, forget how it's called on the agenda, the proposed amendment to the preliminary plat procedure be denied.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Mac?
No,
Oh.
I was getting ready to vote.
All in favor?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Which one are we going to now?
Chris?
Good evening. It's been a number of months, but I'm back, and if you're not asleep yet, you will be rather shortly. I do have 3 text amendments to the living, breathing ordinance, as it's called. And as Ron did mention, we do put these things together, and then we notice things that are missing or things that happen that get approved that really should not have been because there was either not enough language in the ordinance to address the deficiency, or it just either it doesn't exist or it's something that we never really thought of. It's something that's new or innovation that occurs that requires us to maybe add some additional oversight. So those 3 things are in these next 3 agenda items. The first one on the list is the amendment to the accessory structure ordinance. We've had two incidents of record recently. One was on North Dogwood. It was a semi-attached two-story garage addition to a story-and-a-half house. We really needed to clarify the language with respect to what do you consider the difference between an accessory structure and an addition to a house. So there's some language that we added in there with respect to a minimum percentage or a minimum of linear footage of attachment, making the difference between an attached structure or not attached, but an addition to an existing structure versus an accessory structure, which would be typically detached. There's also some variations with respect to another project on South Dogwood at Candler. There was a rather large two-story metal outbuilding that was permitted behind a single-family residential structure that really did not meet the scale or compatible design of the primary structures. We've wanted to add some additional language that would address those types of shortcomings in our current ordinance. I'm sure you've read this stuff very thoroughly and have plenty of questions.
Actually, you answered the question I had. I figured there might have been something particularly come up to give rise to it. Okay.
There's also a fact of the larger the accessory structure, the further it has to be from the primary structure. I think as a matter of scale and lot dimension, that makes a lot more sense. You know, the large. I mean, if you think about like in an agricultural zone, you're going to have larger outbuildings, and it makes sense that those are further away from other structures, and especially the sense of I think it's a two-story. Looks like a camper or RV garage that is only 7 feet away from the primary residence. And for a structure that's that size, which almost has the footprint matching the primary structure, it's way too close to the building. Lastly, there is the number of permitted accessory structures based on the size of the lot. We've gotten requests from property owners on a single-family lot that have 4 out storage buildings in their yard and want to add a 5th one or 6th one. So we had to put some constraints on really telling us to staff what are our limits and what then does the public have the right to do, and then of course they can always apply for special exceptions to those regulations. So that said,
Chris, what do you mean, it says public hearing required 12/14/21? What is that?
well, these are the cover sheets for the city council. I just don't want to redo them. I could put a different heading on it, but if you could see there, the city council packets. So these are basically just the staff reports that go to the upper level. So there is a public hearing for all these 3 items because they are zoning text amendments, and they're also indicated as a public hearing, really for the benefit of the city council, so that they know that they have a public hearing.
Why are there different dates for these?
Okay, that is a very good point. That will be a bit, the one from the solar energy equipment was intended to come earlier in the process, but because of the advertising notification requirements, it got delayed. So the cover sheet needs to be updated to reflect the 12/14 public hearing for the city council.
Okay. Do we need a public hearing for this
Yes.
here?
I've got a question for you, Chris.
Sure.
Okay.
The structures that you're talking about are existing structures. Are they going to be grandfathered if someone already has something on their property are those, would they be grandfathered into the?
Yes.
Into our existing ordinance? And then, just to be clear, we're not taking away any rights of a variance or a special exception?
No, not at all.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Chris? Open to a public hearing at this time. Anybody wishing to come forward to speak for or against?
I did have a question, Chris. How is this measured, the footage? It has to be so many feet from, where's it is it measured from, if it's cantilevered, is it measured from the rooftop? Is it measured from the base? What's it measured from, base to base?
Well, that's a good question. I would think that it's measured from the footprint
Okay,
of the structure.
okay. Okay, just interested, that's all.
Well, I saw no rush to public hearing, so we'll close that. And revert back to the commission. What's your pleasure? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion that we approve the proposed amendment to Villa Rica zoning ordinance 8.022F, accessory structures in residential zoning districts.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Chris?
Good. The next item on the agenda is the amendment to the Villa Rica zoning ordinance, temporary construction, sales, and leasing trailers and offices. This was an ordinance that I wrote for a prior jurisdiction in the city of Hapeville, probably 8 years ago, when I was reviewing our code and looking at the fact that we have a lot of phased development. And if you get into a new phase, there tends to be the opportunity to have a construction office or a leasing office or a sales office. And just for the benefit of the existing property owners and for the maintenance of property values, we want to make sure that those accessory temporary buildings are meeting a certain design standard with respect to the underskirting, covering up the wheels on the base of them, with respect to minimal landscaping, and also for the provision of off-street parking. Whereas we don't have anything right now, so.
And this would kick in, I see there's a maximum of 12 months. When would the requirements kick in? After 30 days or?
It would be basically upon the application for a building permit.
Okay, okay. Of course, like we just talked about, this one development could take 2 years, so they could theoretically have one there for 2 years.
Yes, there are limitations on time with respect to the percentages of the units that are either sold or leased.
Okay.
Any further questions for Chris? Open to public hearing at this time. Anybody wishing to come forward, speak for or against? See no great rush. What is the commission's pleasure? Entertain a motion?
Make a motion that we adopt the amendment as proposed for Villa Rica zoning, temporary construction, sales, and leasing trailers. It doesn't have a number yet, so we'll call it an amendment to Article 3, Section 8.03. So it's temporary use and structure standards.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Do we approve? Any further discussion? All in favor?
My bad, no, yes.
Unanimous. You're on a roll, Chris.
Yeah, let's not everybody rush the podium at one time. It's real gripping kind of stuff here. The last one on the list would be amendment to the zoning ordinance related to the supplementary standards for specific uses. Subsection 802, subsection 2-P, and also Q. Currently, the ordinance reads solar energy conversion equipment, period. Doesn't tell you where to put it, where not to put it, how big it's gonna be, if it's gonna have an impact on your neighbor, if it's gonna have an impact on the property values in the surrounding area. Can you put a solar farm in your front yard? I mean, all these things that are new, innovative technologies that were not even addressed in the ordinance. So what this looks at is residential properties. We're going to not require, but we're going to recommend that those solar panels not be located on the primary facade. We're not going to say you can't do it. We're going to say that if you are going to do it, then you have to demonstrate that there's no other reasonable location that those can be accommodated on the front of a building. Architecturally, they cannot be installed above the primary roof line of the structure. Also, in residential zoning districts, they're not allowed in the front yard areas or in the areas of the yard that are adjacent to a public right-of-way. They would be allowed to be ground mounted in the backyard area. The second part looks at solar farms and what zoning districts those were appropriate in. It also looks at the impact of negative impacts like glare or other types of adverse impacts on adjacent properties in the ordinance. It looks at large-scale solar farm installations on top of commercial and industrial buildings. So it really goes to the next level beyond just the short little sentence and articulating the more appropriate aesthetics and locations and impacts of solar energy conversion systems. From a personal standpoint, my concern is that there are a lot of scams related to the solar energy industry business right now, installation business.
And wind.
And if you look at the cost of installing a system on a single-family home, people can often get roped into long-term contracts that are really not to their benefit, that end up costing a lot of money in the long run. If you think of the shelf life of a solar panel as being around 20 years, and you've got a 25-year roof, basically, if you're replacing your roof every time you're replacing your solar panels, or vice versa, there's those additional costs. Plus, if you're spending $64,000 on a full house solar conversion unit, it could take you over the life of your mortgage to even get the return on investment. So we just want to make people, think twice about the practicality and, where they should or should not be located to the detriment of the community.
Good idea. Any questions for Chris?
Yes, Chris, the height, the plate, you mentioned the roof line. I'm gonna assume, and I'm asking you for clarification, are you referring to the ridge?
Yes.
Of the roof?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Or the ridge of the parapet in the case of an industrial or commercial building.
Sure.
Good. Any further questions? All right, open to public hearing.
I guess the only thing
See none, we'll
Well,
close public hearing.
I'm
Back
sorry.
to council.
I hate to be a contrarian, but it almost seems it's like we're endorsing Georgia Power or Carroll EMC. It's almost like we're giving a governmental thumbs up to her. I know a friend of mine who lives in Fairfield, recently did it at his house. He installed solar panels, and they bought back power from him every month. No, it's not a lot, but he's using the power of his house, and now he had to have a power bill. He's got 3 boys, and it'd be $700-800, just a big house, but they're buying back power from him every month. And I don't know. I mean, I understand why you don't want a big, ugly, you want some control over it. That'd be the only thing. I don't know, it just seems like we might if we make it too difficult, we're kind of endorsing the power companies to people. That's
Yeah,
all- that's all
I live in Fairfield, and we do have the POA controls over similar aesthetics. So I'm sure if you're in a household like that, you have a high-powered build, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, he lived off the lake and a lot of glass on the back windows, and it's worked for him.
Yep.
He did it when he remodeled. I like this. I wouldn't want somebody having a wind farm in the backyard, wind turbines back there either.
Yeah, we don't want to prohibit it. We just want to make sure that it was well thought
It's
out.
appropriate. I can live with that.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we adopt, what are we calling this? Amendment to Village zoning ordinance, subsection 8.02, subsection 2P, the solar energy conversion equipment, and Q, the wind energy conversion equipment, as presented by staff here tonight. Purpose being to set some sort of structures and standards for both solar and wind energy within the city on both commercial and residential properties. I move that we accept the motion as filed.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
I do want to say that I do agree with what you put into this, and I certainly do not want to see this as a discouraging instrument for people that want to move towards green energy. It's coming, or this wouldn't be here before us. Right. Thank you.
If there is no further discussion, call for the vote. All in favor? 4-0 unanimous. You done good, Chris.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you, sir.
Go Braves.
Sure. Hey,
Okay.
Yeah, we might make it.
about half hour.
We're back to Ron.
Yes, I don't have any updates for this month. We only have just one application that has come in that I'm reviewing currently. That's really it. Just we're kind of slowing down right now as far as the number of submittals for rezoning specifically. We really just have plat applications that have been filed and things of that nature that's coming in. It's kind of slowing down for the winter.
Okay. Any other comments? Whitney?
Not for mine.
All right. Okay, I will, any of the public comments? If not, I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
We'll hear more.
I'm sure we will.